Welcome to Business Concern. The topic, how I learned to love confrontation. I suppose there are some who naturally enjoy and seek out confrontation with other people, but this is not true for most of us, where confrontation presents very uncomfortable defensive emotions, even to the point of invoking concern about physical danger. When confronted, my reaction would be one of anxiety and anger. As I began to gain experience in business consulting, especially as I grew further away from my experiences as a trial lawyer, my reaction to confrontational situations changed. Mostly because my posture in reaction to the experience of confrontation changed. At the heart of confrontation is the foreshadowing of potential conflict. Let's examine a typical physical fight, such as a professional MMA or boxing match. The two fighters' posture, often presenting physical assets and combative emotion. Once the fight begins, there is caution and exploratory exchanges, probing strengths and weaknesses. But at some point, weaknesses are exploited and there is a winner. Interestingly, when the fight ends, the fighters often embrace, showing respect for the other's effort. One wonders whether this respect could have been established earlier by other means. Now, this parallels what happens in a civil trial, where the pretrial activities demonstrate strength of evidence and resolve of the parties. The typical civil trial, really the fight, does not happen, since over 90% of the time civil cases are settled because of the cost and time involved in going to trial. Yet most of the time, the settlement cannot happen right away. The parties have to parry a bit to show that the parties are not going to compromise without a costly battle. Thereafter comes the realization that a settlement is the only sensible way to resolve the conflict. Looking at these combative examples brings up the question, is there a way to avoid the posturing and fighting, going straight to the settlement? The key to answering this question is to distinguish confrontation, conflict, and fight. Confrontation is the focus on posturing, where the polar positions are expressed. After confrontation, there can be conflict, that is to say, disagreement without a fight, the actual exchange of blows, or, say, a trial. One way to deal with conflict and eliminate the fight is after confrontation for one party to accept the other party's position. This typically doesn't happen, and the fight ensues. In the fight, one party will win and one party will lose. However, if both parties have the view that there is a different goal other than winning or losing, the discussion can then be about the conflict concerning that goal rather than a fight to determine who wins or loses. As a lawyer in a civil lawsuit situation, the primary focus was to win the case. Lawyers represent their clients by advocating the best position for their client. To win the case, anything gained by one party is a loss to the other party. As a lawyer, I declared the client I represented and then became bound to advocate for that client's best interest, which usually was viewed as winning. In game theory terms, this is the zero-sum game, where the view is that anything gained by one party is a loss to the other party. Acting as a consultant with business owners in conflict, there was no case to win. I was not there to win or lose, but often each owner in conflict with other owners wanted to win, adopting the zero-sum game posture. Initially, when presented with this situation, I thought my job as consultant was to review and propose a solution. But this posture added another dimension to the conflict and resolved nothing. I was naturally competitive and an advocate for my position and became simply another party adopting the zero-sum outlook. The conflict continued. Finally, I realized that the problem was not to provide a solution, but to enable a settlement to occur. Again, the question, is there a way to avoid the posturing and fighting going straight to the settlement? I found the answer to be not to provide a solution, but to convince the parties to change their behavior and provide the solution. For the parties to provide the solution, they need to recognize a common goal. And in most businesses, this is the continued success of the business. Discussion about this common goal should not include references to fault or conclusion statements about right or wrong. The parties need to listen to one another, not make personal characterizations and try to understand why a viewpoint is taken. In short, anything said that causes a party to make a personal defense should not have been said at all and will need to be retracted. This needs to happen notwithstanding that a defensive posture is almost always one caused by fear and is not appropriate when discussing achieving a common goal. Once the parties have listened, they should be able to restate the positions of the other parties. Most of the time, this requires more than one attempt to accomplish the restatement correctly in the view of the other parties. This straightforward procedure causes confrontation to result in decision-making, not conflict. This procedure is easier to describe than execute. I found that I had to present and model several attitudes, really present a profile, to make the procedure work. To enforce the listening part, the initial and most essential part, I had to model listening. To initiate discussion on the common goal, I could not have a solution in mind, or that concept, through body language or other subtle aspects of communication, would stifle any discussion by the parties. I could not use fault or judgmental concepts such as right or wrong so that the discussion would not be affected. If the parties followed my profile, we could avoid the posturing and fighting going straight to the settlement. In a more general sense, I discovered that the profile that worked for consulting situations worked in many other situations in my life involving potential conflict. I began to see various situations I would have viewed as confrontational and negative, instead as an invitation to listen, a signal not to propose a solution, and a warning not to judge. Taking this posture gave me an opportunity to look for the common goal, leading to a dialogue and not conflict. While I never found this profile easy to master, experiencing the positive results taught me to love confrontation and view it as an opportunity to understand. My name is Rick Rebusel. I'm the Principal Consultant of Business Transition Consulting.